shop. Matt's going to talk about simplish sets of fundamental woodworking hand tools needed to execute quality work. And with that, introduce and thank very much for giving his time, Matt Wajda.
But firstly, before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to the group for inviting me back. It's been a little bit since I've seen y'all, and I have really fond memories of all that stuff that we've done together over that stretch of, I want to say, like 4 or 5 years we worked together in either the BIG or other demonstration stuff. I was really happy when Steve reached out and asked me to come and chat. So thank you. On a sadder note, the person that's responsible for all this, my dad, he passed away in February on it 5 days after his birthday. And I'm going to try to keep myself together. I know I can keep myself together. I'm with my friends. He was a huge part of all this for me. When I was 26 or 7 years old, I was in Colorado and building houses, and I thought, this is great. It's sunny here, and I could snowboard and build houses, and there's a lot of work to do, and it was a great place to be young and to work outside. And my mom, out of the blue, she's like, your dad knows about this school in Boston, and he didn't go, but he would love to go to this workshop, and I think you guys should go together. And I thought, well, that's always been his thing. The shop was always his thing and his place to go, even though I spent all of my youth with him in the workshop every day and had like, I didn't know how to say joiner. I just called it the sound that it made when it was running. And the saw when it was running, that's what it was called. There are photographs of me that my mom has taken with my dad's hand on my head, and he would just steer me around. When it was table saw time, that's where I would go, and he would do his thing, and then I would come back out, and we'd do some more work together or whatever. So it was always around him doing that. I think, on the bandsaw when I was 5 or 6 years old, turning when I was 4 or 5 years old. And I just thought that was like regular Kingston, New Hampshire farm life. I just thought that's how everybody was. So fast forward to many, many years later, and he said to me later, he said, I decided to have a family and not go to trade school and learn woodworking. Like, okay, so I can understand that. And so we went to Boston together. I flew back, and my grandfather was still alive, and we live in his house now in Portsmouth and with my family. And so he found a place for us to stay during the week on Com Ave, and we would, at like a youth hostel thing. And so we stayed there overnight, and then we would just take the train from the Boston Public Library stop into the North End, and we'd do our thing. And Dan Fea was our teacher for that 2 weeks. And Dan he's not in the room to defend himself. I saw him this morning, though. He was 22 or 3 years old when he taught that class. I think he was 23 years old. And so I had no idea what was going to happen. I have chisels, and they don't cut anything. They're to remove brick and to chalk open a door that wouldn't stay open for a wheelbarrow to go through or something back in the remodeling days. And I never thought that those tools can do other stuff. And Dan was doing a project with Phil Lowe. I think he was in charge of it. It was Phil's job, but Phil had employed Dan, Will Neptune, Steve Brown, and maybe one other, because it was this incredible architectural wood carving experience, 5 floors of hand railing with peas and sausage beads all the way down on both sides. And it's all shaped and curved, so no machine can make it. But Dan had the 2 end snail-shapey things that would go on the end of the stairs, end of the rails. So instead of a wreath this way, it unrailed that way. I had never, ever seen a piece of wood like that in my life. Even in install days and with fancy houses out west. Never saw anything like that. And he's just carving away while he's chatting with us and answering questions, and a bead pops right off in front of us, and he just glues it right back on like nothing happened. And keep on going. He's scraping. When it was time to show us card scrapers, he would show his curved one and scrape some stuff. And I thought, if I was going to do something else, maybe it would look like that. Or maybe it could be that. And I think 2/3 of the way through, Dan took me aside. He's like, you have cut 3 of everything that I offer in the class, and there's 4 days left. So you want to try this and this and that? Okay. And then he took me downstairs. This is in our old facility, so it's a little bit different now, but he took me downstairs to the administration office that handled the applications and stuff. And he just took one off the thing, didn't even say anything to me, just gave it to me and said, you should look at this and maybe think about coming here. Okay. So I told myself that, like, this is the place, I'm going to come here. Again, never seen anything like it. Had no idea what the curriculum was like. He was walking us around the shop areas, and my eyes are as big as plates, and all I can think about is, like, I can't even make drawings that look like this, or I'm never going to get to that. And we've all at least twice had that feeling, I'm sure, especially with this stuff, with this work. And I was very intimidated. But later, Dan said, yeah, it's steps. It's like a ladder. You get on the first step, and you take the second step, and you get on the third step, then you fall off the ladder, and then you build a new ladder, and you try it again. And I thought, okay. I went back to Colorado. I told all of my friends, all 4 of them, that I'm going to go to this trade school in Boston. And then I think it was around this time of the year, actually a month back, March. And my roommate said, I was looking at your paperwork and the application's due in 3 weeks. Are you going to apply? You have to apply. And like, I didn't even think about that. I thought I would just call and say that I was interested. I took a class with Dan. What do you mean I have to apply? So I did all the thing, and I had to show a portfolio. So I took a bunch of photographs, and we went to the Kinko's in downtown Denver and made a little booklet, which I still have. I should have brought it today. And mailed all that out overnight express to school. And I think 2 days later, I was on the phone at 6 a.m. with a phone interview with 3 people now back, 4 people back who ran the admission stuff. And he said, well, you're here, so you were here, so I don't have to ask you to come out and visit. But when we don't let you in, if you're really interested, please apply again. What did he say? The word, it's very competitive. Like, okay, but I took a class with Dan Fea. Don't you remember that part? He's still the youngest we've ever graduated out of that place, so it must come for something. And nothing happened. And I came home from work one day, and there was a really little envelope. When I got accepted to the University of Maryland, the envelope was like this big. When you get accepted to the North Bennett Street School, it's like this big. I think it's a nonprofit thing or something. But I literally, it's just a true story, I literally stepped over the envelope and went inside and didn't open it. And it wasn't out there for days. I think when I tell my son the story, it's out there for like a month. And my roommate, my housemate Jamie, scooped it up. He brought it inside. He's like, dude, you know what it means when it's little like that? It means it says no. You don't need that much paper to say yes. He's like, you're probably right. And it was on the kitchen table. And then finally, like, someone else opened it, I think. They're like, hey, you got in. You start in January. And this is like middle of the summer. Like, oh, okay. So fast forward to now, I guess. And as much as I never did any like super complex wood projects with my dad, he was always the one that was like, have you thought of that? Do you have one of those? Do you need one of those? Can I have yours? It was always back and forth like that. But there was a moment though, he did say, he's like, I never thought it would happen, but that the youngest is better than the oldest at the thing that the oldest likes to do the best. I thought, well, at least we're related and we can share at least back and forth. But, and since then it's always, I don't remember really doing anything else. It's either I've been teaching at that place or working in some shop somewhere in my basement or in Rollinsford, which we've now been there for, this is our 24th year in that space. I never thought that would happen. Anyways, the other thing though that has come with not having my dad is having all his tools. Holy Toledo. And I thought at first I was going to talk about like, how do we just keep things simple? So I was polling everybody that I knew had done it for a while. So I saw Dan Fea this morning. We're chatting a little bit about it. And of course, I go up there to visit him, and he's got this mirror he's carving, the Medici mirror. So we're chatting about that a little bit. But of course, it's the day that he has like 100 carving tools out. And what I really wanted to talk about was like, how do we go from 100 to 20 to 4 to do the job or to execute? And I thought, well, this is a bad day to get anything from you. You're already like over the top with the tools. He's like, oh no, but you're just in time. I'm done with those. Those don't work. And he's back to his 6. But everything else, he's like, oh, so I noticed I was talking with Alan Breed yesterday. This is Dan. But he was telling Dan, he's like, I have 400 tools, I think. But I've been really using my flat tools, like number 2s and number 3s. And not really like, I don't know too much about 4s, but 5s, 7s, and 9s, the lot sweepier tools, more sculpting type things. They guide themselves better though. The higher walled carving tools, they tend to track nicer once you get a groove started. But he's like, but I can move more and I can get the wood out of the way quicker if I use the flatter tools. And the corners don't catch. Like, huh, all right. And that reminds me of like Michael Dunbar back in the day when I used to work for him, because Dan Fea worked there. It's going to be a theme, I promise. All we used was the 330 gouge. And this, when I say those words, it's a Swiss-made thing. And the 3 is the sweep, and the 30 is the 30 millimeter thing. And it looks like a shovel. I mean, it literally is a shovel with a handle put on the end of it. I use it for everything. I trim tenons in fancy chairs. I trim tenons in Windsor chairs. It is the perfect sweep to go around some of those Boston-style shells on the crest rails of chairs that I've made in the past. So I kept that 330, and now I teach that to my students at North Bennett Street. And they're like, but it's not really a carving gouge. Like, no, it's a wood shovel. You use it to shovel the wood out of the way, the wood that isn't the good wood, till you can scrape down to the good wood. And the other fun part is that you don't really need to sharpen it that much. It's not really what we're doing with it. It's a shovel. I wanted to learn more about, or have a little bit more understanding about how we go from like every hand plane made, thanks Dad, to 2. Or what are the 2? Or, and the setup for this was awesome. The chat before, it was like perfect. And I heard the words of like, you don't need that, and you don't need that. You just need this. And I think that's awesome. I think that's definitely a way to look at a lot of things, I think. And the wish and the dream of that they still made this saw that Dan and I were talking about earlier today. And they're out there. You just can't buy them at the store anymore. But they were $12 at Woodcraft for a long time. And I mentioned this at one of the BIG meetings a really long time ago. And then they came in the mail to me in droves. So thank you all in advance. If you sent me one of these saws, as I definitely have more than 5 of them now, and I have the entire ensemble of them. I have the tapered blade one. I've got the one that has the dog leg handle that unhooks and goes to the other side so you can be left-handed, or the other side of the bench or something. And all of them came from y'all. So that was literally on a daily basis. I'd come into the shop and they're like, someone was in here. They didn't say anything. They just put that pile of saws on your bench and left. Like, awesome. Like 3 of them duct taped together. And I thought, like, please don't give up your blue blades for one. But this is also kind of part of our conversation in a little bit. So yesterday, and again, I'm kind of, if someone comes into the shop or I bump into someone that's either a mentor or a friend or is in our trade, I've been asking these questions. How many do you have? What do you use? And Al came in yesterday, and he's been coming down to check on me on a daily basis, which has been really cool. And I go up. I did help him with the chairs. We cut some compound angle joinery together and fitted his rails. And he's like, you just took like 2 weeks off my life in like 4 hours. And I'm like, well, we need you to carve, man. You don't want to be messing around with this regular tenon stuff. That's for folks like me. And so we went up, we were looking at everything, and we came back downstairs, and he's muddling around and looking at this big door I'm making for another client. And he's like, I remember what I wanted to tell you, so you could tell the group tomorrow. Firstly, tell everybody I say hey. So Al says hey. And he said, when I was learning how to wood carve, and he was young, he was 18 or 19 years old, and he was at the MFA, And that's when you could work there and not have a degree or not, you just had a huge interest in things. And they would hire you just for that. And so he said he took hundreds of chairs apart there and learned how to put them back together and was learning wood carving while he was there. And one of the folks that he was learning from said something like, economy of cuts. I was going to save it till the end, but it's too good for the end. And I've been thinking about that all day. And when I saw Dan, I was like, you're right where Al said you would be. He's like, what? Like, I'm grounding. Like, I know, you're just leveling stuff, getting ready. He's like, economy of cuts. He's like, oh yeah. We didn't even have to like talk about a definition of what any of that meant. It just meant when the tool touches the wood, I'm not taking that tool away until I'm done with everything that tool can do. And or when the next tool presents itself, I need to make sure I can take that a little farther than what I would expect it to do. And that to me was like the 1-inch chisel. That's what I got from North Bennett Street in the beginning. Like, yep.
Matt, do you think that's something that can be learned, or do you think that's intrinsic with having that spatial analytical ability?
That's a great question. I think I think it's both. I think if you've been doing it in a certain way, like I have been for a while, part of that was from folks like Al. And I haven't mentioned Will Neptune or others that I spent time with at North Bennett Street that was definitely like that. And he's not here for me to tease directly, but this is the same person who's like, that sandpaper's still got 3 more carvings left in it. It'll take that right out of the trash can. It's that sort of like, I thought at first like it was a New England thing, yuck, yuck, yuck. But at the end of the day, it's just practical, good technique, I think. And yes, I think it totally can be learned. And I think also the folks that just do it have been doing it and they're realizing until I asked Al about it, I don't think he ever really, I think that's just what you do to be fast. And not fast isn't the right word, efficient, clean, and getting to where you want to go. And wood carving made it an easy topic to kind of broach and get started about having the conversation. And at the same time though, Will told me a long time ago, it's like if you can't carve 4 to 6 ball and claw feet in a half a day, you should probably think about maybe doing something else for money. And I didn't know what he meant until much later. And that's what he meant, I think, except he was already doing it. So I think I'm learning now. I'm a little late to the game, but I'm learning now. And I have my own collections of things. I love bedrock planes, especially the ones with square sides. I love I love shoulder planes made in England for that run where they invented the knurler, I'm not sure, but they just look so cool to me. I have more than 2, but I really only use 1. But I know that they're in there, but mostly so I take them out and look at them. 2 of them I've never even sharpened, but they're so cool to look at for me. I don't want that part to go away, but I do want that other thing to happen where I learn how to push that the farthest, be efficient. And the part I wanted to add about wood carving, because it has this awesome thing connected to it, like porch whittling, right? We're doing the same things technically. I remember like the first time I ever used a draw knife, and Dan was like, this is not wood carving. Like, okay. But in the moment, it was like, why not? It's kind of like that. It looks like that. But it was Will Neptune and Al much later said something like, wood carving has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you go past the end, you're whittling now, or you're on the porch. And that's an awesome place to be, truly. It's nice, it's relaxing, there's no pressure, there's no deadline, there's no how many chips did I make today. I'm just enjoying my time, and the grain direction is always going downhill towards the point. Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you. And so once I had that in my head, like, okay, so you make a pattern, we get some pencil lines on there, you make a sample until you get the tool selection running, and then you execute, get to the middle, and then complete. And he went on to say, like, and it tells a story. You can see where it begins, and it's going to draw you around and take you back to this place and give you a happy ending every time. Like, okay, philosophically, I'm in. And back to the tools. How do we get to that place? How do we practice that and still celebrate the things that we like the most? Raise your hand if you like tools. Raise your hand if you like a lot of tools. Yeah. And it's seemingly so easy. I can only speak for myself. Like I need to go back to the tool auction now that things are kind of up and running again in full bore. Bill Lowe, who I miss dearly, he had a game he played at the tool auction. And this is the Nashua tool auction I'm talking about, where they would be all out on blankets and crates of rusty things and all that, not the fancy auction inside. And so he'd bring his students from the Massachusetts Institute of Furniture, or Furniture Institute, and what he would do is, and once I caught on, I would kind of watch him do it. He would see if he could build a number 4 plane from all the parts, from all the vendors. That was his thing. And I thought, really, Phil? I mean, you have 100 of them. And by the end of today, you'll be gifted 100 of them. And you only use the one you use, which I've seen, and it's always on the bench. You never have to go get it off the shelf because it's always out. But now I understand what he was doing. He was showing me and showing the students, his students, that it doesn't have to come that way. And you get to learn every single part, right? Like literally, he bought the body with no handles on it. No totes, no posts, no nothing. And then he'd go find the threads and the brass caps, and then go to the next table and the next table. And by the end of the day, he'd have a whole one built. And the cool part is that all those parts are relatively, we can exchange at our leisure, which is pretty cool. And on the other hand, though, he's like, it made it so he understood everything that went into it. And I want to do that the next time, not only kind of in honor of, but just to see if I can do it. And to see also, because his thing was, and I only paid $15. Ready to go. Beautiful rosewood handles and nothing's chipped, because it wasn't never a full unit. It was, I picked the best handles that were for sale for $2 each. And I picked the best body that wasn't chipped, but I didn't have to invest in anything else, just the body. That was $4. Or he'd go to the table that like everything on the blue tarp is $1. So I've got 2/3 of the things that I need right there. And it's okay if it's not a brass knob, it can be a Bakelite knob, and that actually makes it kind of cooler. It's a different time. And I thought, that's cool. That's a way to look at tools in a different way. And at the end, he takes it back, he flattens it, hones it up, and the next week it's either going to a student who needs a tool, or he'll run it for a little bit and it'll just go onto his shelf. But I thought, that's a cool thing to try, or that's a cool idea to think about, how to think about it. And also, I'm speaking of folks that are at a different level than me. And it's kind of like that. They ask me to help them a lot. But usually it's things like, you're the fastest miller we've ever seen because you just produce the parts and bring them up here and we'll make them look awesome. And I'm in the back, I'm kind of behind the scenes, which and on one hand I really like. It gives me a little bit more kind of shop freedom, and no one's really looking for me. Everyone knows where I am, but I seemingly am constantly busy with someone's project that I'm either helping with or cutting some parts for, or fitting to a back chair post or something. And at first I thought like, why don't they want me to do all of it? And now I think like, it is the coolest thing ever. I think I get to hang out with all the wizards and never have to get asked to be one. And there are times where that makes the day a little easier to manage. But I digress. What are those tools though? I definitely have favorites and things that I always gravitate towards. And I think about like, so what is that? What are those favorites? And I thought at first too, because I was chatting with my friend Ellen Casper, she's the 3rd woman to ever work in our program, and she'll be the first one to run that program before it's all said and done. Heed my words. Awesome woodworker, really talented, especially with the front of the house, especially with new students coming in. But we're going back and forth about tools and stuff, and she said, you know what you should do? You should slap down a $100 bill on the bench and say, this is how much I have. What do I get? How much can I get? I thought, that'll end it quick though. We'll be out soon. So I thought, well, what would that be? I choose this. And the bummer is they're like $1 million now, I feel like. And this is the Starrett one. This is the fancier one, but not the fancier of the Starrett ones. I don't know where the post scribe is anymore. and it's not the shiny one, but I can't imagine doing anything without this. I do everything with it though. So now I don't know how much they cost. They're more than $100, I think, though. And would the one from the home center do just as well? That might be one of the times I'm gonna have to go with no on that. But I've also inherited I'm just gonna change subject just first, not change subject, we'll go back a little bit. When I was in middle school, I think that's when Bridge City Tools was started or began. And in the 80s, you could sign up for a tool subscription with them. Does anyone know about that or remember that? So you could sign up, and every month they would send you one of their new tools. And you pay a subscription. And he did that from like 1982 until like 2 years ago. And during that time, where was I? I was at school, so I was at North Bennett Street, so it was somewhere between 1998 and 2000. He called me and he said, I'm gonna mail you some tools. I'm like, now? And he's like, well, I don't want to say it too out loud, Matt, but Bridge City is sending me doubles of everything from the subscription. And I don't know what to do. Like, well, did you do the right thing? He's like, I wrote a letter to them. This is pre-internet. This is pre all of that. Well, not pre-internet, but it was pre-website internet, I feel like. So he sent a letter. And he's like, no one ever mailed me back. No one ever said anything. And they keep coming. So that's when I got my first round of those tools. This is what I want to share with y'all too. I literally want to send them out there. So he sent me a bevel gauge and he sent me this. And I thought, well, I know what this is. And to be honest, it's actually a silly bevel gauge. Does anyone see why it's so silly? It's got the big knob in the front. It only goes one direction. I can't put it on the other side. And General already has it figured out that you don't want this in the middle. You want it down on one edge. And this would be much better if it was down here and not touching anywhere around that square so I can put it anywhere I want. But it's infilled with rosewood from Brazil. And so there's that. And then this came, and this is not rosewood, so this is late in the game. And Bridge City has changed their entire everything, their entire marketing thing. So it's no longer with rare woods or woods that are endangered or woods that we shouldn't be harvesting and using. So it's all now that magic, I look like rosewood, but I'm not rosewood, engineered material that other companies have kind of adopted to make other tools out of that takes the price from out of my league to like a reasonable $80 marking gauge. And that's what this is infilled with. But he gave me this is easily, I've had this since I was a student at least. So I'm not sure when Bridge City changed their model, but at the end of the day, I have an early one and I have this one. Has anyone seen this before? So if you make angly dangly things, this is really awesome and it sits flat on the drawing. Well, I'll take it out and send it around because that's how cool I think it is. And they come in 3 sizes. That's the small one. And there's one that's about that big. And Al asked me the other day how many seating chairs he thought I made. Definitely more than 100, less than 500, but I've used that every single time. And so I can set that on a drawing. I can take an angle off of the drawing, and then I can set the slightly inadequate bevel gauge to said angle. What that doesn't do very well is go to the machinery and set up the machinery. The bar is too thick for me. It's hard to see whether I'm against the saw blade well, or I have the right angle or whatever's going on, but it sets the angles really well, and it's easier to take them off the drawings because it's flat. It sits flat. And I showed Will Neptune that, and he's like, yeah, and I have 2 sticks with a thing in it that I made. I'm like, of course you do. But we'll get to that later. When you're new, sometimes you have to have the thing that already does it without understanding that you can actually make it. And I would argue with myself, do you make furniture or do you make tools? Both are legit. Both are complicated. Both take time. If I did both, I don't think I'd finish one or the other, I feel like sometimes, but, and the tools that I make are crude. I mean, they're fixture-like things. Nothing that y'all make, not even the same. When I showed my students that, so I teach chair making primarily at North Bennett Street now, which has been really fun and really rewarding for me, and I've learned a ton about how they get made and how I need to be better at explaining how they get made. When I showed my group that tool, I think that's when either eBay ran out of them, I know that, and I've never seen them in the wild, like at the tool auction or something, which lends me to believe though that like there's an older version of that somebody made. I just haven't found it yet, or I haven't seen it yet. So if any of y'all have any inklings on that, I think of like Lee Nielsen took the best model that they could ever imitate, right? The flat-sided bedrock plane, and then they start making those, casting their own. I'm assuming a long time ago somebody made that tool, like a Stanley person made that tool somewhere. I'm not sure where though. I'm sorry? That kind of angle tool? Okay. That's the one I want to find next. I'd like to have the first rendition. But that I use all the time. Is that on my basics list? No. The bevel gauges though. And I could make this work taking stuff off the drawings. And I'm kind of thinking about chair making now is like, what's the simplest kit that I can have to produce the most complicated thing maybe that we make? And that bevel gauge coming around, but they don't call it a bevel gauge. It's something else. I apologize. I don't know the exact nomenclature to describe it. And it doesn't open all the way. It stops it on the other side a little bit, but you can have it at 180 and then it'll do everything in between and there are no numbers on it. So it's perfect for my brain. It just is that angle and I can put that onto another one of these and go to the saw and do my thing or whatever I'm doing. So we can, back to this though. So Bridge City makes one of these. It's really beautiful. It's brass and it's inlaid with the rosewood. It's got a really nicely milled knob, and it's not. They're not one-off, but they're I think as custom as they could be, especially in the '80s. So I have that. So I have my dad's version of that, and I'm pretty sure he's got a couple of these too. I just haven't found them yet. And I remember these from when we were at North Bennett Street together. So somewhere that is his. So I think we need to have something like this. And whether it's the Brown and Sharp version that we can find at the flea market with a couple other parts to it, or one that has a 12-inch and maybe a 24-inch rule in a kit, I think it's well worth it, well worth the investment. And it translates into every other bit of work that you do, whether it's machining and metalwork, which I'm slowly bugging Steve about learning, and or just general furniture layout work. And this is more accurate than the actual work I can do with my own hands, so it makes me feel pretty good. And I set up all the equipment with this. So when I do machine maintenance, and I used to teach it at North Bennett Street, I don't anymore. I kind of dabble in it now, and I don't run that program anymore. But when I'm working on my co-op's equipment, this is always out on my cart with me. So I know it's the flattest thing, the squarest thing, and the handiest thing. And I'm used to having it out on the metal stuff, so I don't mind it kind of banging around and that kind of thing. And we finally have taken tours to Sterrett in Athol, Mass. To witness the sausage making that goes into these things. And if you've never been, it's worth the trip.
Going in July.
Awesome. It is. I highly recommend it. It's incredible what happens inside that wooden building. Anyway, but I think you need to have one of these so we can do layout. And pencils are free. They always come from the lumber yard, right? We'll need those later. Chisels. We need some. When I started at North Bennett Street, I know where they are. They're just embarrassingly rusty, so I didn't bring them. And at the last minute, I thought, like, well, who needs to see another set of blue chip Marples chisels? I will say though, Irwin makes them now. Marples doesn't make them anymore. And if you can find a set of those blue plastic handled ones that say Marples on it, get them. And if they're actually, its first round is easier to find. These are actually easier to find. Doesn't say Marples on them anymore. None of them say marbles on them anymore, but this was the set that I bought before I left Colorado. They are marbles. I have worn off the marbles, part of them, and it was a set of 5, and they were $30 at a flea market. And I've used them since. My dad gave me a set of Robert Sorby English pattern handle chisels. I use the 1-inch one the most. The rest of them, I know where they are. They're in my tool drawer. They're right in a line. But it's those, that 1-inch chisel, and then my grandfather's pattern chisel. So this, and I'm going to use this today, hopefully, if everything's right with the world. These are out there too. This is the Witherby company. It's a socket. I've never had it out of the socket, but this is exactly my memory since I was born. And I would take this this is my mom's family. I would take it out of the basement. I would ask, you'd say, sure. I would take it outside with a hammer and drive it into the tree and take one step up, then wiggle it out and do it again, and then wiggle it out and do it again until I was up high enough that I could see over the neighbor's fence. And that's what I did with it forever. I should also mention when I was a kid in Kingston, New Hampshire, I was waiting for my dad to come home to show him my thing I made in the driveway, this sculpture I made in the driveway. And my mom didn't know about it, but when you went upstairs and looked out into the driveway, you could see the mosaic that I made in the dirt driveway, with all of his chisels and screwdrivers. All of them. Because they all had awesome colored ends. So I drove all of them into the dirt and made this pattern that was like unbelievable. My mom's like, what were you doing out there? You're out there for like 5 hours. Like, I'm making something for Dad. Oh, yeah. He was not as hard on me as he could have been. And I don't actually remember the consequences, but I just remember being really proud of that and also never forgetting and to never do that again. I didn't learn how to sharpen tools right after that. That was usually the first thing someone asked me, like, oh, you at the grinder for the rest of your summer? No, but I do remember him like picking something up and like crinkling his nose. I mean, like, oh, that's a dirt chisel, right? I'm gonna do some stuff to that, make that work again. But my mom was like, that's beautiful. I remember her saying that from the second-story window where you could see it all. And then when he came home, it wasn't as beautiful. But I digress. But that's where I touched my first round of chisels and my first round of screwdrivers. And son of a gun, I've touched those same screwdrivers in February. That chisel that's going around, that long Witherby chisel, I have since not inherited, but I have since acquired an entire set of those socket chisels. They don't have handles, but it's the entire set from Jim Henry from 100 years ago. And he's like, no one wants these. Like, I want those. I'm not even sure what they are, but I know I want them. It had 2 1-inch chisels in there, so I gave one to Andy McSheffrey at the time, who's a woodworker not far from here. And he used that one when he worked for me or with me for 2 or 3 years. But I was always on the lookout for the 1-inch Witherby unhandled chisels. And then I could find those at like Nashua and at the flea markets for really cheap. I will say though, you put a set of those things together from 1/8 inch to 2 1/4, every 1/8 of an inch, or at least something like that, they're like $1,000 now without handles. I had no idea what I was stepping into in the middle of the 2000s when my good friend was just saying, please make them go away. Oh, yep. But I thought like, well, if the plastic ones were cool, then the older wooden handled ones must be just as cool. And they seemingly have, I mean, they're the same-ish steel. I think these are just the older rendition. And then Marples reinvented the wooden handled ones in ash, I think, and Veritas was selling them. And a student from 100 years ago gave me an ash handled Marples chisel 1-inch that it just sits in the drawer for emergencies mostly. But at the same time, I think if you can find them, I think they're great. They sharpen in an instant. They flatten really fast. They hold an edge reasonably, but you don't feel bad when you bash something with them. and then they sharpen right up and can go right back to work. And when you're learning, at least when I was learning how to sharpen them, I remember Dan Fayes, something like, when you have something that's precious, you might not flip it over and stuff it into the grinder as efficiently. And I didn't really realize what he was talking about until the fancy Witherby chisels. And then, yes, I would like to plan when I take the metal off of those and how much metal we take off of those. But for the blue chips, it was just a way to learn about how to sharpen and not feel bad. Like, it comes out crooked, I can straighten it out and get good at the grinder, right? Whether it's whatever grinder you're using, I think sharpening is all about that, coming off the grinder really, really well. Whether it's hollow grinding, whether you're micro beveling, whether you're using the Tormac, whether you're using a Baldor, if we can find one of those, or even done some great stuff up at Dan's shop with his Rikon ones. They're all good. We just need to get the metal out of the way. But to stand up there and be confident with it, and I remember students were like, that's a 1-inch Lie-Nielsen chisel. I know. Now it's practical. Now it'll cut. Now it's flat. Now we can do stuff with it. And not to say, I don't own any of those, but at the same time, the things that Lie-Nielsen, that I get from Lie-Nielsen are the things that I got from my dad. And then I opened a drawer when I was in Maryland and I found his. Oh my God. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but there's a lot of them. And there are three more of these. One he made a handle for. Little beautiful little turned handle in the front. Like, well, that can't ever go to anybody else except me. And again, he's like, you probably don't need it, but I thought they were just so cool. But this is one of the things I just keep. And I use it sometimes. For a longest time, I never even sharpened it. I just left it in my toolbox, and I'd bring it out every once in a while and touch it. Or he would come up and work. He's like, where's that blah, blah, blah? And I'd like, right, it's over here where you gave it to me. Right, we'll get that back out. And again, it's a remake. It's exactly what Tom Lie-Nielsen does the best. We find the most awesome tools and we reproduce them for the next era, the next generation. I think Stanley made that first, and those are a little hard to come by these days in the Stanley world anyway, I think. And I don't know the numbers, only enough to get in trouble, but I just thought, he's like, look at the shape of it, Matt. Turn it around and look at the shape of it. Like, okay, it's shaped like a boat. Who knew? And now that, only in the last probably, I don't know, 5 or 8 years, I've brought that to life and do a little stuff with it, do some edge work with it, some trimming work with it. But mostly, and it will come as no surprise, but mostly it's that. It's probably what I use the most. And I have a flat-sided Bedrock number 604 that I bought as a student. I paid real money for it. I paid $100 for it at Nashua. And I remember out with my student friends, and they're like, "You're crazy." Like, I don't know. We had a joke for it, like crazy. It's not here nor there. Smarter than crazy. Like, yes, I'm crazy for paying that much, but wait 10 years later, you'll see what crazy really is, right? They're not $100 anymore for one. And finding a complete one that isn't chipped or broken is a whole nother thing too. And that was the first Bedrock that I ever bought with my own money. And I remember Will Neptune holding it. He's like, and he made that like, ooh, that's a blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't even know what it does. Show me what it does. But this is the other ones I collect. And again, I don't know like the patent. I know kind of about the patent numbers, but this is late. This is old. This is new, and compared to like how far back Stanley goes. It's not a transitional one. It has all the adjusters in the back. It's got a regular brass knob. I'm sending it around. It has the low tote, is the front one the tote? No, low knob. The rear is the tote. Regular tote in the back, low knob in the front, so it doesn't have the taller knob. And I thought, well, and Will had always said like the low knob is nice because you can get pressure down there a little bit better. It holds itself in place a little bit better, and your side, if you're righty like me, your left hand won't have cast iron rub on it by the end of the workday. And so I thought, okay, again, I know nothing. I know enough only to get in trouble. So that was the one I found. And another student, he's like, I'm going to take you to Richard Lee's house. You know Richard? He's a tool collector. very quiet person. You would see him at Nashua every year. You go into his basement, like, wow, now I know why none of us can find Bailey planes anymore, because you have all of them. Like, and it isn't like, wow, that's awesome. It's like, okay, now I'm in the 19th century. Whoa. And an entire run of the Lee Nielsen tools in their boxes, put on a shelf. Like, how come you have them out? He's like, I'm a collector. They're in the box. That's where they go. And if I had boxes for the bedrocks, they would be in their boxes. And he only had a few of the boxes, the original boxes. But I bought that number 4 Bailey plane. It has the logo on the iron is the throwback for the Victory, and it's from Connecticut. It's not a Sweetheart. It's the New Brit iron, and it's in the triangle kind of formation. And so I guess this is how collections start. And there's no writing on the lever cap, just a plain lever cap. So it doesn't say Stanley on it, but it's late. It's not, it's probably right before they changed everything, right before they went to nickel, right before they started to put red labels on things, right before they cut the kidney shape in the lever cap. And I bought that, and I bought a number 4.5.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh, thank you. And I bought the 4.5 because that's what Dan Fea was using when he taught the workshop to us the year before. And again, I had no idea what it's for. I just know it's bigger and heavier. And at first I thought, like, oh, I could spring joint upwards of 4 inches wide. I've only used it probably 4 times, to be honest. But it kind of began that collecting part. So most of the Bailey planes that I have, that are Baileys, that aren't bedrock variety, are those. So they're the last of the patents, I think, right before they transitioned to more modern manufacturing. It has a smooth bottom, doesn't have a corrugated bottom or anything. But all of them that I have acquired since then have that low tote or the low knob, no label on the lever cap, and they've got the same patent dates in the back. So I have from number 3, I don't have any 1s or 2s, I will admit. From number 3 to number 7. And I have no 8s until February. Now I have my dad's 8s. And he's got the same one that finishes my collection. That is a good one. And next to that Bailey 8 with the New Brit iron in it, randomly, I think I might have even got that for him, I can't quite remember, is the square-sided number 8 bedrock that I know I bought for him. Somewhere during it was after school, but it wasn't too far after school. And on my way home, driving to Maryland, I would stop in Western Mass at this old tool place, and that's where I found it and gave it to him for something. I think I would come home for Christmas, so it must have been a Christmas thing. And I don't think we flattened it. It took like all of Christmas Day to flatten that boat. It's like that big. But it's square-sided, it says bedrock on the lever cap, it's got the tall knob and my patent years on it. So that'll go into my collection when I bring it back. So the bedrocks go from 603 to 608. I don't have a 604.5. That's a mortgage payment, I've heard. I've seen them, but I've never bought one. I've never had the opportunity to gather enough cash to buy one all in one spot. But 20 years ago, I think they were $400 or $500 to have an original one. But again, I'm trying to talk about not having 1,000 tools, or having 1,000 tools but only needing 5. But at the same time, though, this is part of that journey that maybe all of us have done in some way. Whether we start with 1 and end up with all of them, or we start with all of them and end up with 2. And I think that's what's really happening to me now. I'm circling back around to what Dan Fea and Will Neptune were trying to explain to me as I was getting started, and to maybe not, and for Al Breed to say something like, it might slow you down. It might change how you do the next thing if there are too many choices. Or he said something like, I have these and I love them and I want them around me all the time. They do everything I need, except for these 2 things, which I have over here, and I don't need them all the time, but they're really good to have. And then there are the other ones that just look beautiful on the wall. And I'm sure all of you have at least been up there to his shop at least one go and seen like just what a lot of cool molding planes look like when they're organized. Or Phil standing in front of his wall of molding planes and hand screws. He yelled at me because I put it on the wrong way. He's like, it's simple, dude. All the handles to the left. Okay, noted. But then when it came time for Phil to do his work, the same number 4 comes out that he had when he was a teacher and a student, and the same 2 chisels, a 1/4-inch chisel and a giant like 2-inch chisel. But he would pair all of these. I watched him, not watched him make the whole set of Chippendale chairs, but I watched him cut the crest or the splat to the crest rail shoulder by hand. And it's that long. And it's got piercings in it and stuff, so it isn't continually that long, but it's, for me, like an acre of shoulder that has to get cut. And I want the widest chisel I can bring to bear that moves well, but I'm only going to use the first 1/8 of an inch of it. The rest of it is just to keep me flat as I traverse across that knife line. And I thought, all right, he's going to pick up that 2-inch chisel and just show me the way. And out comes this 1/4-inch chisel, flat and perfect. So I thought, am I using the wrong tool? And then later Dan said something like, no, you're using the tool that's efficient. He is a wizard, remember? He could do it upside down on the bevel if he wanted to. You haven't done it enough to decide that you can downsize that much. And that's also a comfort thing to me. Like I just feel better when there's 7/8 of the tool tracking after the 1/8 I'm trying to cut. And that's what I was taught way in the beginning. But again, to watch somebody who could just execute, doesn't matter what it is. And then the Will Neptune story. So he's teaching me how to carve ball and claw feet. And he has a list, there's 25 steps. And if you follow all 25 steps and reasonable to the 25 steps, you'll have something that, in my case, kind of looked like the dog made it, as opposed to me making it. Like I made it, then I gave it to the dog, and the dog improved it. And he said, I want the first one to look like the dog made it, and he said, like the dog chewed on it. Because if it isn't, you're lucky, and I don't know how to train lucky. I know how to build skills. So it's good that it looks like the dog chewed on it the first go. That's great. Then we can just refine. And that's what we did. And later, when I was carving them, a year later, when I was carving them on a project for real, it's just he and I in the shop, which would happen often, especially on Tuesdays. And then I learned later that like this is cell phones are like around, but not like smart cell phones. And he never had one, never one I saw anyway. And he's like, oh my gosh, I left both of my children at school. And he would fly out of there, and the principal would sit with his 2 kids when they were in elementary school until their dad came to pick him up because he was with me most of the time. And I did that to him at least 2 or 3 times. But we would catch ourselves just sitting on this wooden bench outside the shops, just back and forth. I learned so much about how woodworking is or how woodworking needs to be from those conversations. But when we're in the shop working and I had my model going and I'm carving on the model, he's like, yeah, just turn the tool the other way. Like, I don't know what you mean. He's like, stop putting that down and picking that up and just flip the tool in your hand over and finish the cut. Like, show me what you mean. And he did it like, oh, you mean flip the tool over and finish the cut? Like, yes, that's it. And then that became this joke or this game. And I made up the name after he retired, after he left North Bennett Street, I made up the name or the phrase, which is, I bet you can't do it with this. And that's what we did the next time we hung out. And it came down to, and I would give him my model, my ball and claw foot model, and I would find something. Bet you can't do it with that. And after a while, he invented his own rules, like, I'm allowed to use a grinder. Like, okay, fair. So it ended with literally my ball and claw foot that was going to go on a project, maybe. And I hear the grinder running, and he comes back around the side with a 4-inch bar clamp that he had just ground the end on, hollow. So now he's got cutting surfaces on all 4 sides off the grinder, and he carved all of the inside webs with it. Like better than I could do with the 520, sculpted to get in there and do it. Like it was nothing. And I thought, I want that. And I want the brain that goes along with it and how to like think through that. But he's like, once you understand how to make the wood go away, it don't matter. It doesn't matter what you use. If you had a spoon out here, I could do the whole thing. Because then I could have the handle and the front part. I could have the dome, I could have the sides to slice the wood, and I can sharpen the handle, and I can do the talons and the fingers. Edge tools, planes, saws. I'm going to refer you again, I didn't mean, Will, to be like the kind of the catalyst in all this, or the hardener for the finish that I'm trying to spray today, but seemingly so. I was yakking with Dan earlier about, so Will wrote an art, or was asked by Fine Woodworking magazine to participate in one of those, like, what's your favorite saw? Or what's the saw you use all the time? And handsaw they were talking about. So they had him, and I apologize in advance, I cannot remember the other two or three folks that they asked to do the article. But I know it happened sometime between 1999 and 2001. And I know if you Google Will and handsaws and Fine Woodworking, it'll come up. And the photograph will be like from the magazine, is him holding his blue blade saw with this kind of smirky grin on his face, like, how much did you pay for yours? And at the end of the day, this is what we bought when I took the fundamentals class. I think they were like not $12 then. I think they were like $8 then. And again, thank you all, because I have a fleet now. And these are getting a little hard. They don't make them anymore, which is a bummer. This was the blue blade saw, the classic blue blade saw. I've sharpened it myself, probably at least 1/8 of an inch of the width. And they come right back to life, and they run like the wind. And I can't tell you why. They just run like the wind. I'm embarrassed about this. Someone did send me a new one of these without a saw in it. And I looked at it this morning in me and my son's model room downstairs where we keep the 3D printer. And I never connected like my old one with maybe putting a new sleeve on that saw and sending it out. But I think it loses a little bit of its charm. The blue tape was from yesterday because the other tape is failing. But that's the saw that comes out all the time. So I've got the tenon saw and a carcass saw. They all have bars on the backs of them, and they all match-ish. I don't know years or anything, but they have that same patina and that same kind of apple handle that's been touched a lot. And they just sit in my drawer, and I use them sometimes. I use that one from the Elliott School every once in a while, but mostly it's that blue blade saw that comes out. And I thought at first it was just kind of out of habit, but no, I got a Lee Nielsen independent saw the year that he bought independent saws. So it still said independent saws on it. I can't tell a lie. I gave it back to Tom and said, I can't get it to track. He's like, oh gosh, that's embarrassing. Let me take that back. By the way, we didn't make this one. This was part of the lot that we bought when we bought independent saws. But so we took it back with him. And I say this because he would come to Dunbar's and like bring t-shirts and tools for everybody way back in the day. So he took it with him and he brought it back. He's like, it's sharp. It came out of our thing. It's ready to go. I said, I just told him it was awesome. Sorry, Tom. I can't get it to cut. But it's me. It's not the saw. But I can get that one to cut. On the Elliott School saw, I can get it to cut, but not like that blue blade. And maybe it's habit. Maybe it's because I'm used to that, or I'm used to pointing down the back of the bar when I run it. But I don't know, just something about that. And I teach some students at my shop on Sundays sometimes, and I let them use it, all of them. And at the end, it's that blue blade saw. I can't even explain it. They're like, I don't know why. One of them is a dentist. He's like, I mean, it really doesn't equate to anything that I do, but this one just makes the wood go away better. All right. So how many are we up to now? So we have some layout tools. We've got some cutting tools going on. I should probably take the handle off of this because this adds another component to this that makes it not efficient, to be honest. It sculpts really well this way. So this is my number 49 Nicholson rasp. I've had it since 1999. I don't think they're made in the States anymore. I think you can get them. I don't think Nicholson is making them in the U.S. anymore. They're out. Are they Brazil? I think you can get them there. But we were thinking about maybe we gather up my mentor and friend Lance Patterson's rasps and like sneak them off and have them sharpened. But I don't think you can go a weekend without them. So I don't want to take them too far away. But so the project that I needed to do, I needed that tool, and I didn't have it yet. And Lance came over, and we're working. Yep. So he came over to my bench and he's pushing the wood around a little bit, just kind of, I don't know, getting ready to talk with me or something. And he said, so do you have a number 49 rasp? And it was like the world was going to end if I would answer it incorrectly. And if you know him, he's not the biggest talker on the planet. So to have that much sentencing said in one go was shocking in the moment. Like, I don't. He's like, you don't know what you're missing. And so this is when also you could go to the hardware store and buy one. And I think I bought one from J.I. Joseph, who was our tool dealer at North Bennett Street forever. And it was inexpensive. And so I remember asking, like, just the 49? It was like, what should I get? He's like, the number 49. Do I need a handle? He didn't even answer me. Because I already know what the answer is. The answer is you don't need a handle. But you do need a handle. It's pokey on the other end. Okay, we'll get to that. So I bought one, and then he showed me how to run it, and we made some patterns. When it comes back, I'll show you what he was doing with the patterns, because it is night and day. I cannot recommend enough how much better my handmade patterns come out, meaning like it's out of 1/8-inch template plywood or 1/8-inch ply. But anyways, those tools, the 49 and eventually the spoke shave, I think do that really, really well. And I would watch Lance do it, and then I would do it my own way. And when the tool comes back, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But so I bought a number 49 with a handle and a number 50 with a handle. Does anyone have a number 50? I do too. We should trade them in for more 49s. Then spread the joy. It leaves scratches that are only a little bit smaller than the 49, and it clogs twice as fast. This is my own experience, and it's twice as sharp. Believe me, it's twice as sharp because I almost never use it. If I could go back, I would have bought another 49 and just tucked it in the drawer and waited. That would have been a better investment. And I showed Lance thinking like, I took your advice to the next level. No, that wasn't really what I did. He's like, you could have got another thing. And then he brought his spoke shave over. He's like, you could have got one of those. Oreo, they are amazing tools. But I have tried them and they are super nice. So if you have access or if you don't have a rasp at all, I would definitely recommend one of those. One of the Aru style or anything that's hand stitched. They're amazing. And it doesn't take that much cleanup after. They'll clean up with a card scraper. So that's kind of cool. I didn't realize like how fun sculpting was until I started to learn how to do it. And again, efficiency, economy of cuts. That's what we're looking for. It's truly what we're looking for. And the more I sculpt, now that's when I feel like a craftsperson or an artist, I guess. More a craftsperson. The technical side of me is everything else, like how I join things together, how I think about joining things together. It's a hard thing to say to a student like the dovetails. It's just what we do on the ends. They just happen to look cool because they're triangle shaped or it's magical how they all fit in there. But it's utility, right? That's how just we join things together well. Lance would say something like, that's just good cabinet making. That's what you want to do. And most of the time, it's pretty simple things to get there. I'm sorry. Oh, the handle, yes. So Lance said, I'll take you through if you want. I was like, that'd be great. So we worked together. So I watched him make all the patterns with all the students. And what he did was this. So he brought his, so it has no handle. Now it's twice as fast. For one, it's not in the way. And he uses it upside down on the edge of the bench. This is the template plywood, and he's doing this. Only down. Only down. And I thought, how is it that way when it's not in your vise and you can't see it? The second you put it in the vise and you're on edge, you can't do anything except make ditches and not make it fair. But when we're going to bandsaw a shape out of an 1/8-inch piece of plywood with a pencil line, with this angled a little bit, down, 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 down. 5 seconds. Try it today. Like, if we take one thing out of this talk, that would be one of them. It's unbelievably fast. It's unbelievably clean. This cleans up itself. When it's angled, it cleans up itself a lot better than this way. Angled is better. You get more purchase across the template, and you can just sculpt right to the line. You don't dig a hole, and you just keep moving forward. And then it's not clamped down, and it's not in the vise. And I'm not moving me around the work, which is what you do when things are in the vise, right? I'm moving the work around me, which is way faster and way more efficient. And he just hugs the edge of the bench, and then no, just this. And then when I watched him sculpt, he'll hold it like this or like this, but the thumb is always here, and he's always pulling with the other hand. It's like, what about the thing? He's like, it's not in my palm. I'm not pushing that hard. If you're doing that, you're pushing too hard. He's like, you should be blending across that surface. And that doesn't matter. But when you go vertical, it's just not distracting, and I can be really brisk. But what about that? Put on the thing. Thread's on. You take it off. He's like, just leave it off. And when I'm at school, the one I have at school, and I have to say, thanks, Phil. I have Phil Lowe's number 49 rasp. Okay? Like, how many rasps do you have? He's like, total? I like rasps, and I like files. I've got 50 of those. He's like, but I only use 4, but always this one. Always this one. And the surface you get on the edge of that plywood, you think like, I have to sand it 3 grits, I got to take it to the spindle sander and make it good. I'll beat you on the spindle sander. Not because I'm faster, because it's faster and better. The thing, you can split the line and make it exactly what you want it to be. And the 50s, if you come across the 50, they probably still make them because there's still 100 of them still in the warehouse. We just need the 49, at least for this part of it. I do have some other files that I kind of forgot to bring, but, and I did buy the file card, and even then he's like, okay, that works pretty good. I'll take the file card, the little bristle brush to clean it off or whatever. But that I think is a good thing. Spoke shaves. Another one of these tools that like, why can't I get it to work on one hand? Like it just won't cut. It's sharp as all get out, but I can't get it to cut. And I think some of that is what we were talking about before. And because the chair making part of the show is a lot of this stuff, even if you choose to not make cabriole legs, and whether I get to this or not, this is more just kind of so I feel better about myself up here, like I might do something. This tool is going to come to bear a lot in that process. Even if you're flush cutting all the parts, we're still going to do there's places where just the other edge tools just don't fit. And I should also mention, I have 2 of these. One my dad gave me. He's like, oh, you're going to need this. This is so good. It's a record, and that's not a bad thing, but it's a round bottom record. And evidently they didn't make a lot of those. And I have like a mint one because I can't get it to cut. And I couldn't then, I really can't now. And I kind of gave up trying. It's more like, I understand. So I asked Lance about that as a student. He's like, yeah. And then he walked away. That wizards can do that. It's part of their wizardry thing that they do because they want you to come back around. So he had a lot of his tools at school, I don't know why, but he had his rack of spoke shaves, and he has like a dozen of them. But only like 2 hand planes. He's like, oh, I really, really like the spoke shaves. And I was like, well, where did you get your round bottom one? And I have my record in my hand. He's like, not that one. Like, why not that one? What's wrong with that one? He's like, it's round. Like, well, I know it's round. I thought that's the whole point. You need a flat one and a round one. Like, yeah, you kind of do, but just not that one. It's like trying to get the blood out of the stone here is seemingly impossible. And so I follow him over to his bench, and he takes his out. And I was like, where did you find a 151? So again, I don't know the numbers by heart, but this is a 151 Stanley spoke shave flat bottom. And I bought that in Nashua. I paid real money for that. I paid like $20 for that. They're like $80 now, or maybe, I don't know, but they're not as easy to find anymore. I like the double knurled handles, the knobs. So I like knurled steel. It's just a cool thing. Regardless how it gets made, it's just a cool thing. I feel like I can adjust it better. Even if I grind a little angled, I can adjust it better. It feels really good in my hands, and that's the one I've had since I was a student at North Bennett Street, so 6 years. It's been sharpened a bunch. It's not the original iron. The original iron was bent from the lever cap thread. And Will said, "Oh, just take a punch and you can flatten it." So I did, and broke it right in half. He's like, "Not just on it. You got to like do some other stuff before you hit it." So I learned. One tap, broke it right in half. Yep. Guaranteed. Don't do that. Put it in the vise, hit it with a rubber mallet. And I'm looking at this 151 round bottom plane or round bottom spoke shave. Like, where did you get that, Lance? He's like, "I made it from a 151 flat bottomed." Like, so why did you do that when you could buy? Because the other ones don't work. Like, well, why don't they work? Like, and he had this like geometry moment with me, which Will would do that right away. He'd start with that right away. He's like, "Oh, it's because it's not tangentially on the thing," and da 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 da. Lance was like, "There's no flat, so it won't cut." So I went back to that record, took the iron out, pushed it 2 or 3 times over the Norzon paper, our 80 grit paper that we use to flatten cast iron things with, and put like, I don't know, 30 seconds of flat on each side of the mouth. That thing runs like the wind now. I never use it, but it runs like the wind. I just let more iron out of the flat bottomed one. It becomes a round bottomed all on its own for the most part. But anyway, again, it's like what I understood looking at the tool, and then what he understood how to actually make it work. So his round bottom is a flat bottomed, and there's easily 1/8 of an inch of flat all the way around the mouth of the tool, but the wings are out of the way. So you don't have to let out the same amount of iron I would have to let out to get a flat one to cut into a curved surface, right? Because it's getting held up by the 2 flat sides. You got to let more steel out there for it to cut. But he's like, "Try it." I could do this whole surface with his, or I'd have to change mine somewhere in here. And he's like, "Yeah, it's nothing. You set it once and just go. It'll do all those shapes." Like, "Why not patterns?" He's like, "Because the rasp does it better on edge. Don't spoke shave the patterns, Matt. Just use the rasp for the patterns. Put the spoke shave on the solid wood." But then I get to Michael Dunbar's and there's no metal spoke shaves anywhere. There are all these newfangled wooden spoke shaves, and man, there's some nice ones out there, right? There's some really beautiful ones out there. They're like Dave's shaves. It's the most coolest things I ever saw. Like ones like this big. Yep. And I should have brought, when Dan Faya left North Bennett Street, he put together a school collection of spoke shaves because he and Lance have a thing about these 2-handled single cutter things in the middle. And there are all kinds of them. There are some that have different numbers, but just the lever cap, and you tap the iron down. There are some that have no lever cap, and it's a strange wedge-looking thing, but they're all Stanleys. And he has one that's got a whole round thing on one side and a flat thing on the other. It's Stanley with the round iron still in it. But I want to say that's for other trades. That's like leather or the bucket maker or something. There's always something else going on in town that would have those tools going. So that's a great question. So the irony in that, or the coincidence is I did. When I first got all those tools back to North Bennett Street, the next thing I did was buy all Hawk irons for them. Yep, and then the next thing I did was trade all the Hawk irons for a number 50 rasp or something. I can't remember, but they went in, I sharpened them, I ran them, and I don't know why I took them out. I can't remember. One of them closed the mouth down so much that I couldn't use it.
And the only way you can change the mouth is you have to go up in the front.
Yeah. It's kind of like sanding the old furniture, right? You just don't want to do it. Don't strip the finish off. But yeah, to your point, I did try them, and they were great. And I remember my mentor, Alex Krutsky, who has since passed away. He was a part-time instructor at North Bennett Street when I went through the process. He loved the hand tools, loved the number 80 scraper. That was, for some reason, his thing. And I was all excited because I had a Hawk iron that was going to go in the number 80. And he's like, "I've never seen one of these. And you don't even have to grind it." He was so excited. He's like, "It's already ground at 45. That's so awesome." And I don't know anything about Rockwell hardness, and I still don't. I just know the higher the number, seemingly the harder the steel. I didn't know anything about that. They had like a black, not coating, but they were like the steel was oil blacked, I think, to harden it, or it was left like that after it got hardened. So I polished the back, and it made it all shiny and nice. And he's like, "Don't even grind it. It's just good how it is. Just hone the front of it." So then he put it in my vise, and then he took the burnisher out. So we all have, if you haven't had the experience of a number 80 scraper, I, again, highly recommend it. It's a cool hand tool to use, and it keeps things flat, but you can push it with handled wings, and you can be pretty aggressive with it. You can change the shape of that iron into like, you can make it the shape of a spoon, and it will scrub plane cross grain if you make it. But a refined cut, a nice burr under there, and you can make beautiful shavings with it. And it doesn't mind figured woods. It does mind cross grain, but it doesn't mind figured woods, and it's really unbothered by grain direction. You can kind of come both ways at it, but it leaves the surface flat, unlike the single version that has no base that I can dig a hole with if I'm not careful. So he was all excited. He put it in there, and he put my burnisher on it. He ran it once across, and you could hear the ring right before it cracked. That like singing sound, and then the steel just went. He's like, oh my gosh, I broke it. And then we're looking at it, and he actually called Hawk, spoke to Mr. Hawk. He's like, oh, that probably got over hardened. Send that right back. And they sent us out another one, and to be honest, I traded it before I even got it into the tool. So, but I think they're better now. I think they've got all that metallurgy all worked out. And I think you can get different thicknesses in their irons too, and it can help with that thickness problem. I know the students that I see with Lie-Nielsen's, they're taking the Lie-Nielsen irons out. I'm not sure why, but they're going back in with other things. The mouths are a lot bigger, and everything fits a little bit nicer. But on the older Stanleys, and I don't want to file that mouth open. I think that would change the performance, and it changes the tool forever. You can't put it back. So, and I want usually the smallest mouth we can get, that part that lets the shavings out, hold the fibers down as they're getting cut. So keep everything crisp. But back to that spoke shave heading around. After I tried Lance's and I looked at it, it's like, oh yeah, there's flats around those edges, and that allows that to traverse in and out of the cut and actually function, rather than like you push it, just rolls your knuckles down and it won't actually cut. But before I forget to talk about cutting with the spoke shave, everyone has those in the room, I'm assuming, a version of those or something. Sometimes I think they get second or third billing because they don't cut. Like I've sharpened it, it's flat, everything's held well, I barely have any iron out, and I can't get it to cut. Most of the time, my experience has been it's these. It's not even you. You don't mean to. We're just used to like picking up heavy stuff, or like pushing something or wiggling the table saw out, or whatever we're doing that requires force. And then you put the tools in our hands, and suddenly we're kind of doing things the same way, holding on. And I can watch students do it, and I watch their knuckles change. And when I used to teach machine woodworking, I would say things like, I would like to see a little bit of knuckle over there, a little white knuckle, when you're featherboarding the board against the fence, or you're holding something down to stay firm and in control. That's a little different than when you're trying to hold on to the wings of that spoke shave and trying to get it to cut. And what I've learned, and the demonstration, so how do I demo that and have everyone execute that? Or how do I get folks to kind of think about that? And the only way I could come up with it, and this is a kind of a hobby of mine anyway, and why I was in Japan in the first place, I do a little Aikido martial arts, and part of that is what makes it really, when it's working well, is when I'm not stressed out, when I'm not trying to hurt somebody, or I'm not trying to squeeze something to death. And it sounds so dramatic, but at the end of the day, it's the same. And when I'm soft in my hands and soft in my body, I know it sounds a little philosophical, but I can train better, I can move better, and I'm more powerful. When I put those same ideas into my woodworking, and it's been 10 years of Aikido and 25 years of woodworking, so there's a little competition in between the two. They're melding together now in a much better way. And my work is better. Like, I don't go home as tired as I used to because my posture is better, and I'm not leaning out all over everything, and I push from the middle instead of push from my arms all day, and that changes things. But what's really helped, to be honest, my students understand all that stuff, and I don't have to talk about it anymore, is we just shake hands. So I say, I'll show you how hard to hold the tool. And then we squeeze hands, and they want to rip my hand off every time. That's kind of a built-in phenomenon that we have. And we just squeeze gently, and that's what I'm looking for. So, and I used to teach this at Michael Dunbar's. I just didn't know the words or how to express it better. I just knew don't hold on so hard, but everyone would. Why would you ever want to drop this on the floor? But the answer is you hold it as if it's about to jump out of your hands. That's how hard you're holding it. And the second that happens, shavings come out. I guarantee it. If it's sharp, like I know all of you can sharpen tools. I have no doubt in my mind. None of these got sharpened before I came here. I will have to admit that. But at the end of the day, as soon as that happens, as soon as that starts, the work comes out nicer. So I do that when I'm spoke shaving that. I do that when I'm at the lathe. Where else do I do it? I do it when I'm making the patterns. So if I'm not white knuckled, the parts aren't white knuckled. I know it sounds cheesy, but I feel like it's pretty true. And it's almost like when you're driving, you know? Like I don't drive well when I'm doing that, but I definitely drive better when I'm like a little softer and I can move around and be a little freer, I guess. I know it's a little cheesy, but at the same time, I think it works pretty good. And I thought I would maybe push this, but seemingly it's never going to come out. But anywho's, point is, I need at least one of these. I have two. I've got the record round bottom with the better flatter bottom, but I only really use this one. And it likes that work. It likes this work down to about here. It doesn't like this, but that's what this does. This likes this. And the chisels like those edges. And I thought I was going to bring something that I would shape while I was talking, but to be honest, I'm liking the back and forth better than actually me pushing wood. All of you have seen me push wood at least once over the last 15 years of our time together. But I think we need one of these. And if you can find a 151 with the knurled knobs, it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. And there are also, I don't know if there are other tool companies out there. I know Lee Nielsen. Lee Nielsen makes spoke shaves, right? It's the same challenge though. The mouth is really small, the handles are weird, and they don't flow. Not like these. And I don't know why it's the shape or those two little flats where you can put your thumbs. And I try to like not get my hands wrapped around things, because then if I'm just holding on like that, then I can't pressure it, can't force it, then it'll track better. It'll definitely track and cut nicer.
Finesse tool.
I'm sorry?
It's a finesse tool.
Yes, yes. And I think the more we finesse these, the better the work comes out, I think. And when I'm tired or I'm annoyed or whatever, or in this case, sad, it just doesn't do it the same, I don't think. But we need them, and I think it should be in the fundamental toolkit. I think we should have it in there. And sharpening, I kind of think about sharpening like if I brought stones, there'd be other stones that would, like the ceramics, I think are awesome. All that stuff that's out there, the diamond plates, all that's awesome. Doesn't matter to me. And I used to be you get coded at North Bennett Street. You don't mean to, but you do get coded there. And in the beginning, it was like, if you don't use water or oil stones, nothing will be sharp. But at the end of the day, I've learned it just needs to be flat, right? You just need to have it flat. Something on there has to be flat. The rest of it is totally up to y'all. Doesn't matter to me. What's important though is that we can get sharp tools, make good work, and then finesse the cuts. Economy of cuts. Card scrapers. I have a lot of card scrapers, but it's an accident. It seems like stocking stuffers for woodworkers. I don't know about y'all, but it's like, oh, I got my name on mine, or this on that, or the other, and I literally have a small stack. This was the one that I started with at North Bennett Street. This is the one that has the Swedish fish on it somewhere. You can't see it anymore. Will Neptune said to me, you know you're getting somewhere where the card scraper falls out of the holder that it came in. I still have the holder, and it don't fit anymore by at least a ½ inch probably of metal that I have filed off over the last 25 years. And that came with a set. It had a thick one and a thin one. And I don't like the thin one as much. I like that one the best. I wouldn't consider this an edge. I can keep this pretty flat and track it pretty well. And I don't mind if the edges roll off a little bit, because I'm going to sculpt all that away anyway. And I kind of know that ahead of time. But on a flat surface, like the tabletop or something that I'm working on, and I've got a little defect I need to deal with, or the edge of a board, and it just, no matter what I do with the plane, no matter how much wizardry I try to draw off of my mentors, I still can't get it to cut how I want it to. I cannot remember the guild person's name. That person could be sitting in the room right now, and I mean that with love and respect if I'm about to step in it. It's a square scraper. Stu Mac sells them. And when I first bought mine, you could only get the one shaped like a kidney. Yes, yes. And I remember that the inventor used it to shape fingerboards on guitars because it was quick and it left the shape really well. I can't, and they now make square ones. I'm sorry? Bruce makes the square ones. I've never used a card scraper like that. And when I read about sharpening them, like, I get to hollow grind the edge at 90? How cool is that? I don't need a burnisher, I don't need a file, I don't need a vise. I can do it all at the grinder, any grinder I want, and wow, does that thing cut. But what it does the best, I think, is it leaves the surface flattish. It doesn't dump the corners because you can't flex it, at least I can't. It's an 1/8 of an inch thick high-speed steel, or maybe not high-speed steel, but tool steel. You can't flex it. It's cutting off an edge that's been ground away, so the hook isn't forward. There is no hook. The hook's on the inside. But when I scrape and skew it a little bit, like on the bird's eye maple edge or the curly maple edge, I can make a shaving, but it doesn't round the corners over. And I remember showing Dan Fea because he's like, no way, no way. And then he's like, I can't even get it to cut a ditch even if I try because I can't flex it to cut more. It just traverses. And I think about like when I make chests of drawers, when I do things that I have something thin connected to something thick, I think of like the edge of the case and the blade of the divider frame for the drawers. That connection right there might need a little love with the card scraper. That flat square one does it better than the one I can flex because I don't dig in. And I can pivot it off the corner and flatten that and maybe even take a blob of glue off on the way by. And it doesn't mind kind of cross grain. And it doesn't leave big scratches on stuff because I can polish the sides really well. It's not thin. It's not like trying to flatten a potato chip, which is like those card scrapers are when you first get them, especially.
It is tricky to sharpen.
In the beginning, I would agree. And I feel like the advantage that I had when I first got it was that I'm not afraid of the grinder, definitely not afraid of the Baldor grinder. And once I figured out that there's no angle involved and Sharpie marker on the end, and willing to flatten it all off and go again, which is really what was happening in the beginning. I think it took 4 or 5 tries to get just how I wanted it and to get it so the wheel was taking away all of the Sharpie at once, because that was the important thing. Once I got the radius working on the edge of that steel, everything came out nicer. But man, does it cut, and it stays really sharp for a long time. And I do use the edges also. On chair work, there's some cove shapes that sometimes need to get scraped, and they work really well. I don't have to flex it. I can just push it almost with one hand, and it works really well. And I guess there's a smaller one too, one that's a little smaller, teardrop, also very nice. So kind of the specialty tools, I would add that to my card scraper list, but it definitely was an improvement in my work. Doesn't get used all the time, and I like, obviously, that thin one, or the one that's going around now is the one that gets used the most. But at the end of the day, that StuMac one was definitely an eye-opener. And I like the idea that it came from us, that came from our group. And I believe the craftsperson lives in South Berwick or something, I think, which is close to me. So anyways, I thought that was kind of cool in the moment. Card scrapers, marking gauges. I want you to come up and just talk about marking gauges instead of me. And I still use yours all the time. It's out and about, and I apologize for not bringing it because it's nice. I wanted to start with like what I started with, and yours is here, and these two are over here. But I keep yours in the toolbox so I know where it is and I can find it. And I still remember the day we were exchanging tools and talking about tools. Janet Collins, my friend Janet Collins, gave me this one when I was a student, and I sharpened it in the way that it talks about being sharpened. So it's basically got a nail jammed in the front of it, and I filed the nail halfway and then didn't take the nail out. I just flipped it over and ran the nail on my stone, and it works okay. I mean, I can totally make work with that and cut dovetails with that all day and cut tenons with that all day. The complaint I have, what I really love about it is its scale and its size. I love the size of the fence. It's little, but it has, and it's shaped, so it's triangular, and the beam is also triangular-ish, meaning I don't want to be tangential to the bar. I want to be angled on the bar. I want to come in and out of the cut, in and out of the cut. So I'm on the fence, on the fence, on the fence. And the angle of the fence allows that to happen no matter where I am. The bar, the beam, is really, it's well made. It stays pretty flat and straight. So seasonally, which is a thing, in New England anyway, my wooden tools don't behave the same in the summer as they do in the winter. And to be honest, I only have one or two that I actually use that do that, do those things. But at the end of the day, that one doesn't seem, it's boxwood. It doesn't really seem to be bothered by a humid environment or a humid shop. And I can take that pin out and I can sharpen it or change it. And it does pretty well. It took me a little bit to get it to be able to cut cross grain, which I think is the number one kind of, it's like the hardest thing to do sometimes, is how to get an edge tool to cut well cross grain. And the wood to get out is pine. Grab a scrap of pine. If you can get the gauge to, or anything, to cut cross grain in pine without tearing out, that's as sharp as that tool could ever be, I think. And chisels, if you can get the chisel to cut end grain pine and not mush it over like a sponge and slice it off, that's as sharp as that tool could ever be, I think. At least for the woods that most of us will be working for the most part. And you'd think softwoods, duller tools, you want it as sharp as you can get to cut the softer woods. So I finally got that to track in pine pretty well, and it would do fine. As students, we were, and this was Will, he's like, it would be better though if it had a cutting gauge in it, if it had like a knife in it. And so that started the evolution of like, all right, we're going to make them. So we made them in North Bennett Street for many years. We'd buy the knives from Hawk, I think. We'd get them in like 100-pack, and then we'd just start making them. They're good. It took a long time to actually get them made. So efficiency-wise, I don't think that necessarily was the best project. And then we have other students making them and selling them and stuff. But anyways, I have a post cutting gauge like that one. And I have a knife-style cutting gauge. And this is new. This you can buy from Veritas now, I think, or Lee Valley, thank you. I know that's not the company. Lee Valley's the company. This I like very much. This is the Francois Cullen gauge from Canada. When I bought mine as a student, you would order them from him via letter. Really cool. And improvements have been made. Mine is cracked. Mine was cracked right here. So this one has steel pins in it that hold the brass pusher. So when you crank on it, it doesn't expand and break that open. But this is very easy to get the cutter in and out and sharpen. And if you turn it around, just make sure, if you loosen stuff, just make sure the iron doesn't fall too far. And that gauge, I use that for almost everything that I do. Not everything, but almost everything that I do. And it, again, I like the size of it. I like the scale of the beam. It fits between my fingers really well. And I'm not tempted to grab it like this. So I can hold it like that. It's a little bit more comfortable. And I keep my thumb out where the pressure needs to go, at least for me. I did flatten the face of it. And I did flatten the face of that other one. It's got brass in it, so I want to level the brass and make sure that that's all nice and crisp and flat. And with the wooden ones, you kind of got to pay attention to that. It might change seasonally. Might have to go back and do that again. It's like the wooden hand plane that you pass over the joiner every few years just to flatten it off again and close the mouth down with something else. But I will say, if you don't have a marking gauge or a cutting gauge, that one from Lee Valley is a really nice option. I don't think they're screaming expensive, but they do have they've got a little bit of a push to them. I think they're $60 to $80 or $60 to $100. He's got a couple different varieties. He's got post versions, mortising versions, but I like the plain one, just the regular plain cutting gauge. What I really like about it is that I can take them out and flatten them and sharpen them, just like yours. I can take it out. And the fact that it's not wedged in, the fact that it's nicely tooled in there, that I can get the wedge out easily and put it back in, it holds really well. That's what I like about yours the best. And anywho's, but that I've been really happy with. I haven't had to modify anything on it other than honing the iron, sharpening it up and going. And that one I like a lot. And I can't imagine doing any work that involves any sort of joinery that we cut without something to scribe the lines. And and this was Will's words when I was learning was starting to learn kind of what all this meant. And he said, sharp pencils are for writing notes. Dull pencils are for drawing sculpting lines. And knives and marking gauges are for cutting joints. And that's pretty true. I'd say that's pretty true. The dull pencil just makes me feel better that I don't break my sharp pencil as I'm trying to draw sculpting lines onto shaped parts. But the duller, smushier pencil actually is more helpful than less helpful at the end of the day. But that brings us to our throwing knife portion of the show. And again, it's like the weirdest thing. How Phil Lowe keeps like slowly making his way back into my life and my stories and my workshop and my work. I have one of his marking knives, and it doesn't look like this at all. So this is Hawk, and it has the Stealth Bomber grind profile on it, meaning it's faceted on two faces. It's got a bevel, and it used to come pointy, really pointy, like 60-degree pointy. 60-degree pointy is that it will not survive potentially one strike in the wood. That tip's going to break off. So typically what we do is we'll grind the point off completely and then retool it into a softer point. And then you have two bevels and then two lesser bevels on the side. And you'll notice that as it goes around, it's faceted on the sides. So when it goes up to the grinder, it grinds a little bit at one angle, and then I turn it a little bit more and I grind the other angle. But when I hone it, it's like honing 4 half-inch chisels at the same time, individually. But it's made the point not break off, and I can be really aggressive with it when I strike lines. And I like having cutting surfaces on both sides. So I can strike on one side and I don't have to ever flip it over. It's the same in all views. I can lay it flat and strike lines off of a surface, which I do in chair making and chairs with arms and stuff. I do that a lot. With other marking knives, especially like Phil has this beautiful one, rosewood handle, brass ferrules, and you can take the knife out, right? His knife holder, and then you can put any half-inch wide knife back in. But the one I have is the one that he used. It was the original one. But to be honest, I prefer the Hawk. I prefer the one that's coming around now. It's more versatile to me. Even though I can strike lines on both sides of the ruler with Phil's, that one I can lay flat. So I could have it on a platform. I could have shoulders poking through, i.e. an arm stump on a chair, and I can run that knife around rather than taking it out and awkwardly trying to run my marking gauge around it. But I want parallel off of a surface that I've created that's going to go away when the arms go on. But I use it I just call it platform work that I'm going to scribe off of. And that works really well for me. And they flatten well. I know Hawk still makes them. And they've got two little holes in them, like the violin makers at our school love the Hawk knives because they can apply curly maple handles to them and have something that draws a little bit nicer in the wood. So they actually use them as carving tools in the French tradition and German tradition of violin making. All the F-holes get cut from the back with a knife, not necessarily from the front with carving tools. It's a little different. But that's the one I use the most, and that's the one that I got in the workshops 100 years ago or 26 plus years ago. And that comes out the most. And I had lemon juice on it. That's why it might be a little speckly. But that means I know it's mine from across the room. That's what happens to the mallet that you don't make. So this is the Swiss-made mallet that would come with a carving tool set. How do I know that? Because it came with my dad's carving tool set. He's like, this is dumb. You should take it. So this is what I've been using since I started. And I have another one that's unwhacked for later. But the bummer about this is that it's solid. So it delaminates. Unlike maybe the ones that we would make with quartered or flats on that we can flip around and laminate a handle in between and then turn it on the lathe. It's a killer exercise and you get a tool right away and it feels really useful. And it won't do this. It won't delaminate and it won't punish itself. And you can tell the flat's on side because that's the most bristly and the part that hurts the most. And I'm not even going to send it around. You all have seen anything quite like this. So this is what the file, P-I-E-L, looks like after 25 years of going to town on it. But you got to have something like that. And now I have my father's Lee Nielsen, the little carving mallet that Lee Nielsen made a really long time ago. I don't use it. I mean, I've carved wood for as long as that he's been helping me and training me and watching me right now. It just doesn't fit in my hands, but it's like a prize to me. It's a little bit of a, like a paper holder. I just remember being younger and being like, what do you do with this thing? It's like something you'd stamp a wax thing with on an envelope or something. And I think it came with something else he bought, or a carving kit or something that he bought. But anyways, it just sits near my toolbox down on the lower part of the workbench. And it happened to fit in the milk crate when I was last down in his workshop. So I have to go back there and do the hardest thing, which is go through all this stuff. The last thing in my bag, and I didn't think I was going to take it out. Did I take it out? I took it out. It's a collection thing, but it's my favorite one, the one I use all the time. You can go a long way and never need one, but if you like metal things and knurled things, this is a great place to start on those. So this is the record 311 version of the, not Diston, not Preston, Clifton, thank you. So Clifton makes the 3-in-1, and that's the imitation, that's the new version of this. That's what they were modeling it after. All I ask is this is one of the ones we want to be careful with. This is a special one. I bought that in downtown Portsmouth as a student for not that much. Again, I didn't have any idea what they did or what they were for. And I have that one. That's the 1-inch one that you can take off and put the bullnose onto, which I've never taken it off. Will said, why would you ever want to take it off after you flatten it? It's like, good point. So I never did. And I'm still looking for one to complete my set and have a shoulder plane with the bullnose with the knurled knob that says record on the side. I have my father's Preston plane that's the little one, but I don't have a record version of that. And there are record versions of those out there that were made in England. That one, though, I have to say, I can't tell you how many tenons I have fit with that, or how many things I have fit with that, and how many shoulders that I've cut with that. I just did it a couple of weekends ago with Al. And he came down, he's like, oh, so you're taking the little triangle thing you were telling me about. I have no idea, but oh, look at that. And he was just standing, he's like, so it's like, look, you're using it for what it really does. Like, yeah, shoulders, yeah. Lays on the tenon cheek and you cut the shoulder with it. To a knife line executed by your marking gauge. And it'll just stay parallel to that surface until the knife line crumbles off and you're done. So I will have to admit, 90% of that knife line got cut on the table saw, but it can't reach the other side because the tenons are compound angled, because he's doing it in the traditional way instead of maybe a single angle. And at the end of the day, that's what takes care of that little wafer of wood. And it would be a lot to chisel, meaning I have to, not a lot, but I have to be more diligent. Where that, not diligent isn't the right word. I have to work as hard. It's self-guiding. I don't have to be the person that keeps the tool flat. The tool's already flat. All I'm doing is just guiding it along its surface, letting it trim down to the line. And to be honest, I never really saw that happen. I've seen it do everything else except that, really. But that's really what it does. That's truly what its job is. And the bigger sizes meant bigger shoulders, bigger surfaces. And they're designed to be laid on their side and pushed. In those knurled sections, that's what they're for. At least that's my understanding. But I do everything with it. I bevel tenons with it. I shoot shoulders with it. I thickness with it. Sometimes I don't sharpen pencils with it. I do that with my other number 4. But I use it a lot, and I remember learning how to tune it when I was at North Bennett Street. It was a fussy thing. And like keep it square, and we're trying to keep the sides walls flat and square to the bottom, and all these other things. And there's not a lot of lateral adjustment in the iron. The iron has to project a little bit, like more than 1/1000th, or it won't cut to the inside corner. And I'm going along, it's like, why is it round? I thought it was, like Will's like, no, your iron, you got to tap it over and make it stick out evenly. He's like, how does it get in there? He's like, it won't, it just tracks and cuts. And he's right, just tracks and cuts. Yep, and the Clifton comes with shims. You can pack the mouth out or in. And Will always said, he's like, you want that thing as small as it can get. Because you're going to cut end grain with that. That's designed to cut end grain, not cut cross grain. It just happens to like cross grain because it's sharp, but the mouth clogs immediately when you're running end grain or when you're running long grain. But you take that and let it ride on the tenon of a breadboard end, it's the nicest breadboard you'd ever cut. That shoulder comes out really nice. Yep, I like the weight of it, but what I truly, really love is the knurled knobs and how they milled the metal. I'm really fascinated by that machining and how they did it and how they did it a long time ago and how they still are super accurate, really well made, and are running now. So I haven't done anything to that except sharpen the iron since I tuned it up. I flattened it, got it 90, made sure the iron's projected correctly, and now all I do with it, oh, so there is a little secret to that. It's kind of like what do you do when you have hand planes when you have edge tools like these, I guess we'll call them planes, that don't have lateral adjustment. So lateral adjustment would be that thing behind the iron, and I can move the iron parallel to the body of the plane, right, and get it to cut flat. Or I can trick it and get it to cut an angle if I want to. I wouldn't necessarily do that, but I'm thinking about flat. So in the pre-lateral, you're tapping it with your chisel handle or with a mallet to adjust it, right? But you're adjusting it. With those, you can't adjust it that much, very little. And I think of like the router plane, like a stand, and I didn't bring it, and I probably should have put that in the bag. That is a fundamentals tool, a router plane. And to the tune of my mentor, Lance Patterson, calls the other routers electric routers. And that the router plane has no cord on it, and it never did. When he said, where's your router? He's not talking about the electric router, because if he was asking for that, he'd say electric router. But how do you get the iron that's shaped like a golf club and attached to this coarsely cast base that's held on with a collar and a threaded thing in the back, right? That's the basic router plane setup, right? Even with the really nice ones that have a milled place and the irons are in there diagonally and held really well, we still have a problem. And the problem is what happens when the iron projects past the sole of the plane, past the body. I want to be able to take a chip that's parallel, the surface I leave, I want parallel to the bottom of that plane. But when you get them out of the box, they don't do that. And if they do, it's really lucky and just go with it and pretend I didn't say anything. But what do you do if it isn't? How do you get it to do it? And how do I get the shoulder planes to solve that same problem? Or a plane that has no lateral adjustment. How about that? Because I can't laterally adjust the iron in the router plane. So I didn't bring these hand screws to show this, but I have these hand screws. Oh, maybe I didn't bring them in. They're in the truck. Never mind. So imagine two surfaces like a hand screw. And the nice part about a hand screw is it's kind of parallel. You can make them parallel to each other. And it can clamp around a stone or a file, right? So then I could take that. They can all live. That's perfect. I could take said router plane, and it could ride on the surfaces of the hand screw laid flat on the bench, right? You're smiling because you know. I can let the iron out until it touches the stone, and then I can run it back and forth a little bit, and it'll mark the bottom of the iron parallel to the bottom of the plane. Then I can take it to the grinder and grind off that weird shape and then hone it to that edge. And now every time it goes back into the body of that plane, it'll cut parallel to the bottom. And some of them are like, wow, you look at my old one, it's like, holy Toledo, how does that? And then it takes a flat shaving because it's related to how it's being held. So if we think about that same idea, why can't I get my shoulder plane to track well and I can't adjust it at all? And Lee Nielsen's notorious for this because they're huge, especially the really big one. There's no adjustment. The iron's really thick. There's nowhere to go, and I can't grind it well enough to get it to track. So, but if I just let the iron come out just a little bit, and then I run the plane on the stone, it seems like a sin to do that, but it'll make a mark on the bottom of the iron parallel to the bottom of the plane, and you take it and you grind accordingly. And it makes the day suddenly useful again.
Are you talking like a backup?
Yes, I am, but I'm grinding that all off. I'm not making a secondary thing. It's not about sharpening, it's about correction. I'm going to grind it flat. Then I'm like I'm joining the edge of a chisel. Or I can run it on the edge of my stone till that bright is gone, but I'm now crooked to the sides of that plane iron, but then I grind it to that edge, like I'm grinding a skew chisel almost. But when you put it back in, now it'll track. And I do that like every 3 or 4 times when I sharpen that shoulder plane because it's a little fussy about that. I don't know why. I think it's how it mounts together. But at the end of the day, that solved the router plane problem. It solved anything that can't adjust. That works really, really well. And Fine Woodworking magazine's got a great thing that Dan Faya wrote about the router plane, and he talks about that. And it's well worth even just backtracking and looking at that because you can take that same idea and plug it into like 5 other things. that have the same problems. And that's what gets that back into shape, I think. And you can take a tool that's literally paid 20 bucks for with this awful looking iron, and by the end of the day, I can like run around and take a chip that's really, really nice. I use it a lot for like all the dados I cut for anything I make that has drawers in it, chests of drawers and stuff. They'll come off the table saw, sometimes with the handheld router, very rarely, but most of them come off the table saw. And you know, we've got panels of wood that are sometimes like 24, 28 inches wide. I know it's cupped. I'm well aware that it's not flat anymore. And I'm gonna cut these shapes that need to be parallel, but I let the router plane after make them parallel. So we've all had that experience on the table saw, like, well, I'm cutting, now I'm not, now I am, now I'm not. But then I can take the router plane and run it on that. I'm exaggerating. I mean, we're talking about cups that are like, you know, 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch, just enough to be annoying. Enough that once I dovetail the box together, I can't fit the thingies in, the divider frames in, because the bottoms of the dados aren't parallel to each other. But I can take that router plane, now that it's adjusted, put it flat on the bench. I love to do it because I can pull it towards me. It loves cross grain. And I know also that I'm about to glue the case together, because this is like the last thing that has to happen. And even if I'm a little cup, the router plane will ride that surface and level the bottom of that. And when the dovetails come into play, it'll make the box flat again, and then I can fit the frames. And everything seems to come out okay. So I think the handheld router plane is a tool that should be in the basic kit. And I apologize for not bringing it. And since we're thinking about router planes, I do have to praise Lee Valley. So they make that really little router plane, right? And now they make cutters that are really small, like smaller than anything I could hand grind on an Allen wrench. And that's the cutters I used to make for my really little one. I would just get all the Allen wrenches, bend them a little bit, hone them, grind them, put them in there, and I could inlay with it. And it worked great. And I still have them. But now they make that tool for you, which is kind of nice. And it fits really well, and the body is very reasonable. And it comes with an 1/8 inch one, and you can buy this really pointy small one. And we were using it to do compass star inlay, and I can cut almost all the way up to the point with it. It's so nice. I don't own one. My shopmate owns one. But at the end of the day, a good size, the regular size router plane, and a little one. And that little one could be the old Stanley, and then I'd put the Allen wrench cutters in it. Or it could be the little bit fancier Lee Valley one. They probably cost the same. Stanley doesn't make the old ones anymore. And they come with that really nice cutter. And my shopmate Doug said it was literally like another 10 bucks, and that cutter was in the box. So that seems well worth it to me. Yep. In conclusion, man, I love tools, and I love making stuff. And I think I'm going to try to slim the herd a little bit in the process of now gaining like more hand tools than I would ever know what to do with in one go. And don't worry, I'll take care of them. But really, dude? Anyways, thank you all very much.